Admiral Thexvar stood before the massive holographic display aboard the Draconian flagship Eternal Dominion, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he studied the tactical readout. The blue marble that was Earth hung suspended in the center of the projection, seemingly defenseless and unaware of the approaching storm. Around it, the positions of his vast armada were marked in crimson dots, 12,000 warships representing the combined might of the Draconian Empire's Third Fleet. "Status report," Thexvar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems for the Empire. Sub-Admiral KYX Tal stepped forward, her ceremonial battle claws gleaming under the bridge's harsh lighting. "All vessels are in position, Admiral. The human homeworld lies completely surrounded. Their primitive defensive satellites have been catalogued and found wanting. Our intelligence indicates they possess only chemical propulsion vessels and crude nuclear weapons." Thexvar's lipless mouth curved into what passed for a smile among his species. The Draconians had been expanding their empire for over 3 millennia, and humanity represented nothing more than another stepping stone toward galactic dominance. Their scouts had reported a species barely capable of interstellar travel, still confined to their single star system with only a handful of colonies on nearby worlds. "And their response to our arrival?" he asked. "Silence, Admiral. Complete communications blackout from all human installations. No defensive positioning, no evacuation attempts. It appears they have simply given up." This puzzled Thexvar slightly. Most species, even primitive ones, at least attempted some form of negotiation or surrender when faced with overwhelming force. The Zolorians had broadcast pleas for mercy for 3 days before submitting. The Karathi had launched their entire fleet in a futile last stand that, while doomed, had at least shown spirit. But humanity? Nothing. Lieutenant Commander Vexith approached from the communications station. "Admiral, we have been broadcasting standard surrender terms in their primary languages for 6 hours. Radio silence from all human settlements, Earth, Luna, Mars, the asteroid mining stations, everything. Perhaps they are too primitive to understand the nature of what they face," KYX Tal suggested. "Their largest warship detected by our scouts was barely 300 meters in length. They may simply be paralyzed by fear." Thexvar nodded slowly. It made sense. The sheer scale of the Draconian Armada would indeed be incomprehensible to a species that had never encountered galactic civilization. Each of his dreadnoughts stretched over 5 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with plasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes. His flagship alone could reduce continents to slag. "Commence the demonstration," he ordered. "Target their moon. A surgical strike on the dark side, enough to crack it visibly from their homeworld. Once they witness our power, they will find their voices quickly enough." The weapons officer, a young Draconian fresh from the Imperial War College, hesitated at his station. "Sir, targeting the natural satellite may cause tidal disruptions that could follow your orders, Sub-Lieutenant," Thexvar cut him off sharply. "The humans need to understand the consequences of silence." The flagship's main plasma cannon began to charge, its distinctive whine building to a crescendo. Through the viewports, other ships in the fleet were similarly powering their weapons, creating a light show of deadly energy that painted the void in shades of crimson and orange. "Firing solution locked," reported the weapons officer. "Execute." A lance of superheated plasma, bright enough to temporarily overwhelm the optical filters, streaked across the void toward Luna. The beam struck the lunar surface with devastating effect, carving a canyon 50 kilometers long and 10 kilometers deep across the satellite's far side. Debris exploded outward in a spectacular shower of rock and metal that would be visible from Earth's surface. The bridge crew watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Surely now the humans would respond. Any species capable of space travel would recognize the demonstration for what it was, a clear message that resistance was futile. Minutes passed. Then, an hour. Still nothing. "This is unusual," KYX Tal admitted, studying the communications panel with growing confusion. Even the most primitive species typically respond to such a display. "Are we certain their communication systems are functional?" "Our scans indicate multiple active transmission arrays across their planet and colonies," Vexith replied. "They possess global communication networks, interplanetary relay stations, everything necessary for contact. They are choosing not to respond." Thexvar felt his first flicker of unease. In his long career, he had never encountered a species that simply ignored the presence of an invasion fleet. Fear, defiance, desperation, these were normal responses. But silence? It suggested either complete ignorance of their situation or something else entirely. "Admiral," called out the sensor operator, "we're detecting some unusual energy readings from the human homeworld. Very faint, but the signatures don't match any known technology in our databases." "Elaborate," Thexvar ordered. "It appears to be some form of quantum field manipulation, but the patterns are strange. Almost organic in nature. The readings are emanating from multiple points across their planet's surface." The Admiral studied the sensor data with growing concern. The Draconian Empire had catalogued thousands of different technologies across their conquered territories. Quantum field manipulation was an advanced technique, far beyond what their intelligence had suggested humanity possessed. Could our initial assessment have been wrong, he wondered aloud. Perhaps these humans are more advanced than we thought? Before anyone could answer, the ship's AI chimed with an priority alert. "Admiral, detecting massive energy buildup from Sector 77 Alpha." On the main display, one of the crimson dots representing a Draconian destroyer suddenly flickered and vanished. "Report!" Thexvar barked. "The vengeance of Korath has disappeared from our sensors," the sensor operator said, his voice uncertain. "No distress signal, no explosion signature." One moment it was there, the next. Another dot vanished from the display. Then, another. "Multiple ships going dark," the operator continued, his voice rising with panic. "The Stellar Fury, the Iron Talon, the Void Reaper. Admiral, we're losing contact with entire squadrons." Thexvar's blood ran cold. His ships weren't just going silent, they were disappearing entirely from all sensors. No debris fields, no energy signatures indicating destruction, no electromagnetic pulses from exploding reactors. They were simply ceasing to exist. "Open a channel to Battle Group Epsilon," he commanded. No response, Admiral. Battle Group Epsilon is gone. The holographic display now showed gaps in their formation where entire squadrons had been moments before. Hundreds of ships, tens of thousands of Draconian personnel, vanished without a trace. "Sir," called the communications officer, his voice trembling, "we're receiving a transmission. Source unknown, but it's broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously." "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a human voice filled the air. The tone was calm, almost conversational, speaking in accented galactic standard that suggested recent acquisition of the language. "Greetings, representatives of the Draconian Empire. This is Director Sarah Chen of Earth's Department of Cosmic Affairs. We apologize for our delayed response to your arrival, but we wanted to ensure we fully understood your intentions before opening dialogue." Thexvar exchanged glances with his officers. The woman's tone was completely at odds with their situation. She sounded as if she were greeting trade negotiators, not responding to an invasion fleet. The voice continued. "We note that you have damaged our moon and are maintaining an aggressive posture around our solar system. We also observe that you have brought approximately 12,000 military vessels to our home, which suggests hostile intent." "How does she know our exact fleet composition?" KYXTAL whispered. "We have taken the liberty of removing several of your ships to demonstrate that your current approach is unproductive. The crews of these vessels have been relocated to a safe dimension while we conduct this conversation. They are unharmed but will remain our guests until this matter is resolved." Thexvar's mind reeled. Relocated to another dimension? Such technology was theoretical even by Draconian standards, and they were among the most advanced species in the galaxy. "If you wish to establish diplomatic relations with Earth and its colonial territories, we welcome such discussions. However, if your intent is conquest or subjugation, we must inform you that such attempts have historically ended poorly for the aggressors." The Admiral finally found his voice. "Open a return channel," he ordered. "This is Admiral Thexvar of the Draconian Imperial Fleet," he transmitted. "You will return our vessels immediately and submit to Imperial authority. Your world will be annexed according to Galactic Conquest Protocol 7. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species." The response came immediately, and now there was a hint of amusement in the human woman's voice. "Admiral, we appreciate your adherence to protocol, but I'm afraid we must decline your offer of annexation. Earth has no interest in joining your empire." "You have no choice in the matter," Thexvar snarled. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift. Oh, Admiral, came the reply, and now the woman actually chuckled. You seem to be operating under the assumption that you are the stronger party in this exchange. Perhaps a further demonstration would be helpful. The sensor operator suddenly screamed. Admiral! Something is targeting our flagship. Thexvar spun toward the tactical display just as reality seemed to twist around them. Space itself appeared to fold and buckle, creating impossible geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. The massive dreadnought groaned and shuddered as forces beyond comprehension gripped its hull. Shields to maximum. Return fire. Thexvar roared. Targeting system won't lock. Weapons offline. Sir, the quantum field is interfering with all our systems. Through the viewports, Thexvar could see his mighty flagship bending like soft metal in invisible hands. Emergency klaxons wailed as structural supports began to fail. Yet somehow, impossibly, the ship wasn't being destroyed, it was being carefully, precisely disassembled. Bulkheads peeled away like flower petals, revealing the inner workings of the vessel to the vacuum of space. But, instead of explosive decompression and death, Thexvar watched in amazement as the crew compartments were encased in shimmering energy fields that maintained atmosphere and artificial gravity. Fascinating engineering, came the human voice over the communications system, now somehow broadcasting directly into their minds rather than through speakers. We've always been curious about Draconian shipbuilding techniques. The molecular matrix of your hull plating is quite ingenious, though we might suggest some improvements to the quantum resonance chambers in your faster-than-light drives. The bridge section was now completely separated from the rest of the ship, floating freely in space while still maintaining full life support. Around them, Thexvar could see similar things happening to the remainder of his fleet, ships being systematically and bloodlessly disassembled by forces that treated the laws of physics as mere suggestions. What are you? He whispered. We're humans, Admiral, came the cheerful reply. Just as your intelligence reports indicated. Though I suspect your information may have been somewhat incomplete. This is impossible, KYXTAL breathed, staring at the tactical display that now showed their entire armada reduced to floating debris fields of neatly sorted ship components. No species develops this level of technology without leaving traces. Our scouts surveyed this system for months. Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see, the voice explained patiently. Humans have always been rather good at appearing less threatening than we actually are. It's served us well over the millennia. Millennia? Thexvar echoed. Your species only achieved spaceflight decades ago. Oh my, no. We've been traveling between stars for quite some time now. Though we did appreciate the Draconian Empire's recent surveys of our remote territories. Your cartographic data will be very helpful for updating our navigation systems. The Admiral's mind struggled to process this revelation. If you possess such power, why remain hidden? Why not expand, conquer, build an empire? The silence stretched for a long moment before the human answered, and, when she did, her voice carried a weight that hadn't been there before. Because we remember what we used to be, Admiral. And we have no desire to become that again. Before Thexvar could ask what that meant, another voice joined the transmission, older, male, with an accent that suggested a different region of Earth. Director Chen, we've completed the disassembly process. All Draconian personnel have been safely extracted and are being held in comfortable quarters. No casualties. Thank you, General Morrison. Admiral Thexvar, your crews are being well cared for while we decide how to proceed. You have presented us with something of a dilemma. Thexvar floated in his command chair, surrounded by the remains of his bridge, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity. What kind of dilemma? The question of what to do with you and your empire, came the reply. You see, Admiral, this isn't the first time the Draconians have attempted to conquer a human world. Your scouts may have been thorough, but our intelligence network is considerably more extensive. The Admiral's scales paled. Impossible. This is our first contact with your species. Perhaps our first official contact, yes. But, tell me, Admiral, what happened to Battlefleet Omega approximately 18 months ago? Thexvar's blood turned to ice. Battlefleet Omega had been an expeditionary force sent to investigate reports of habitable worlds in the Rigel sector. They had simply vanished without a trace, leaving behind no distress signals or debris. The loss of 5,000 ships and their crews remained one of the greatest mysteries in Imperial history. He whispered. The colonists on New Geneva were quite upset about your arrival, Director Chen confirmed. They had been living peacefully for over 2 centuries when your fleet appeared and began demanding their surrender. Unfortunately for Fleet Omega, those particular humans were descendants of our military engineers. What did you do to them? Nothing permanent. They're currently enjoying the hospitality of a pocket dimension we created specifically for such situations. Quite comfortable, really. We've provided them with entertainment, educational materials, and recreation facilities. Some of your people have even taken up hobbies. Commander XNAL has become quite accomplished at what we call watercolor painting. Thexvar felt reality sliding away from him. The Draconian Empire was the supreme power in this galaxy. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, subjugated dozens of species, built a civilization that spanned thousands of star systems. The idea that a single species, one that appeared primitive, could casually defeat not just one but 2 of their major fleets was beyond comprehension. I don't understand, he said finally. If humans possess such capabilities, why haven't you conquered the galaxy yourselves? Why allow the Empire to exist at all? Because conquest is not in our nature anymore, Admiral. We learned long ago that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to choose not to. We could have eliminated your empire decades ago, but we chose to observe instead. We hoped you might eventually evolve beyond the need for constant expansion and subjugation. And if we don't? The silence that followed was more ominous than any threat. When Director Chen spoke again, her voice carried a sadness that chilled Thexvar to his core. Then, we will do what we must to protect the innocent species under your rule. 3 days had passed since the destruction of Admiral Thexvar's armada, and the Draconian Imperial Council was in chaos. The emergency session had been called within hours of losing contact with the Third Fleet, but no one had expected the truth that was slowly emerging from the fragments of data they could piece together. Empress Vexthera, supreme ruler of the Draconian Empire, stood before the holographic display in the council chamber, her massive form casting shadows across the assembled military leaders and political advisors. At nearly 3 meters tall with scales that shifted from deep purple to black depending on her mood, she was an imposing figure who had ruled the Empire for over 4 centuries. Explain to me, she said, her voice carrying the deadly calm that preceded her legendary rages, how an entire battle fleet simply disappears without sending a single distress signal. Fleet Admiral Korthvan stepped forward, the decorations on his uniform marking him as one of the Empire's most experienced military commanders. Your Imperial Majesty, the last transmission from Admiral Thexvar's flagship indicated they were engaging what they believed to be a primitive species around the 3rd planet of system designation Sol 3947. Primitive? The Empress's scales rippled with dangerous colors. A primitive species destroyed 12,000 ships? Not destroyed, Majesty, corrected Intelligence Director Nixtal, an elderly Draconian whose cybernetic implants supplemented her aging mental faculties. Our analysis of the quantum resonance patterns suggests the ships were disassembled, taken apart at the molecular level and the crews extracted alive. The council chamber fell silent. Such precision required technology far beyond anything in the Draconian databases, including their own. Furthermore, Nixtal continued, accessing her neural interface to project additional data, we have discovered that this primitive species may have been observing our empire for considerably longer than previously thought. Cross-referencing missing fleet reports over the past 50 years reveals a pattern we previously attributed to space anomalies or piracy. The hologram shifted to display a star chart marked with red indicators. Battle Fleet Omega, as you know, vanished 18 months ago. But, looking back, we also lost the exploration vessel Dark Predator in the Vega system 3 years ago. The mining fleet assigned to asteroid cluster 7749 disappeared 4 years ago. Deep Patrol Squadron Gamma went missing near the Perseus Arm 5 years ago. Empress Vexthera studied the pattern with growing unease. You're suggesting these humans have been systematically eliminating our forces? Not eliminating, Majesty. Based on our analysis of the Sol 3947 incident, they appear to be capturing our people intact. If this pattern holds, we may have lost over 50,000 personnel to this species over the past decades. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. 50,000 Draconians, vanished without a trace, held prisoner by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. Defense Minister Kexnar, a younger but fiercely ambitious Draconian, stepped forward. Your Imperial Majesty, I recommend immediate mobilization of the 1st and 2nd Fleets. Combine our forces and blast the entire Sol system. End this threat before his silence, the Empress commanded, her scales now deep crimson with anger. You would have us commit the same mistake that cost us the Third Fleet? If these humans can disassemble 12,000 ships without effort, what makes you think 20,000 ships would fare better? Before KEX-NAR could respond, the chamber's communication system activated. The voice that emerged was clear, speaking perfect High Draconian with an accent that suggested recent acquisition of the language. Greetings, Empress Vexthera and assembled members of the Imperial Council. I apologize for the interruption, but I felt this matter required immediate attention. Security Chief Zartek's hand moved to his weapon, but the Empress raised a talon to stop him. You are? Director Sarah Chen, representing Earth's Department of Cosmic Affairs. I believe you have been discussing the fate of Admiral Fexvar's fleet and the implications for your empire. How are you monitoring our secure communications? Intelligence Director Nixtal demanded, her cybernetic implants working furiously to trace the signal's origin. Please don't distress yourself trying to locate the source, came the amused reply. Human technology operates on principles your current scientific paradigms would find challenging to comprehend. We are not monitoring your communications so much as existing within the quantum framework that makes them possible. The Empress felt a chill run through her massive frame. What do you want, human? To prevent a tragedy, Your Imperial Majesty. Our analysis indicates you are considering mobilizing additional fleets to assault our solar system. I wanted to explain why this would be inadvisable. Defense Minister KEX-NAR stepped forward aggressively. You dare threaten the Draconian Empire? Our combined fleets number over 2 million vessels. The silence that followed stretched uncomfortably long. When Director Chen spoke again, her voice carried an undertone that somehow conveyed vast amusement. Minister KEX-NAR, isn't it? We've been monitoring your career with interest. Your strategic innovations during the Centauri campaign showed considerable tactical acumen, though we question some of your decisions regarding civilian populations. KEX-NAR's scales paled. His actions during that campaign were classified at the highest levels of Imperial security. How do you know about your classified operations? As I mentioned, our surveillance capabilities are somewhat comprehensive. Which brings us to the reason for this communication. The holographic display in the council chamber suddenly activated without input from any Draconian operator, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. But this wasn't any map in the Imperial databases, it showed the true extent of human presence throughout the galaxy. Thousands of systems were marked with blue indicators, forming a vast network that dwarfed even the Draconian Empire's territory. These weren't conquest markers or military installations, they were designated as research stations, diplomatic outposts, and what appeared to be refugee settlements. This is impossible, whispered Fleet Admiral Korthan. Our scouts have surveyed most of these systems. They're uninhabited. Your scouts have remarkable dedication, Director Chen acknowledged. But they see what we allow them to see. Humanity has been active in this galaxy for considerably longer than your records indicate. We prefer to avoid attention. Empress Vexthera studied the display with growing dread. If accurate, it meant the Draconian Empire existed only because these humans permitted it to exist. Why, she asked. Why hide? Why allow us to conquer other species if you possess the power to stop us? Because we hoped you would choose to stop yourselves, came the sad reply. Every species goes through phases of development, Your Imperial Majesty. The drive to expand, to conquer, to dominate, these are often necessary stages in achieving galactic awareness. But they must eventually be outgrown. And if we don't choose to outgrow them, then we will make the choice for you. The simple statement carried more menace than any threat of violence. The humans weren't offering conquest or destruction, they were offering management. Intelligence Director Nixtal's implants chimed as new data streamed through her neural interface. Your Imperial Majesty, she said urgently, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Empire. Not just Sol system, everywhere. The galactic map shifted, showing energy signatures emerging around every major Draconian installation. Military bases, shipyards, colonial governors' palaces, even the Imperial throne world itself, all were suddenly surrounded by the same quantum field distortions that had preceded the Third Fleet's disappearance. A demonstration of capability, Director Chen explained calmly. Every military vessel, every weapon installation, every orbital platform belonging to the Draconian Empire is currently targeted by our defensive systems. We could dismantle your entire civilization in approximately 47 minutes. The council chamber erupted in panicked voices, but the Empress raised her hand for silence. What are your terms? Cessation of all military expansion. Withdrawal from occupied worlds whose species did not freely choose Draconian rule. Establishment of a transition government focused on converting your military infrastructure to civilian purposes. In exchange, we will provide technological assistance to help your species adapt to a post-conquest society. And, if we refuse? Your military capacity will be permanently neutralized, and your empire will be placed under protective administration until your species demonstrates the maturity necessary for self-governance. Defense Minister Kex-Nar snarled with rage. You cannot seriously expect the Draconian Empire to simply surrender everything we have built. Our ancestors conquered this territory through strength and blood. Your ancestors, Director Chen replied, and now her voice carried a weight of ancient sadness, remind us very much of what humanity used to be. We understand the pride in conquest, the intoxication of power, the belief that might makes right. We remember those feelings very well. What do you mean? The Empress asked. We mean, Your Imperial Majesty, that humanity was once exactly like the Draconian Empire. We too had a period of expansion, conquest, and domination. We built an empire that spanned half the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. And we nearly destroyed ourselves in the process. Intelligence Director Nixtal's implants were working frantically, cross-referencing historical databases. There are no records of a human empire in galactic history. Because we erased them, came the reply. Every trace of what we had been, every monument to our conquests, every record of our victories. We made a choice to forget our imperial past and begin again. Why? The Empress whispered. Because we discovered that the universe is not empty, Your Imperial Majesty. There are powers out there that make our petty stellar empires look like children playing with toys. Ancient civilizations that transcended physical existence millions of years ago. Entities from other dimensions that view our reality as entertainment. Forces that could snuff out all life in this galaxy without effort. The holographic display shifted again, showing vast regions of space marked with warning symbols. We learned that the universe operates on principles far beyond conquest and domination. We learned that survival requires cooperation, not competition. And we learned that the strongest species are those who protect the weak, not those who exploit them. Defense Minister Kex-Nar was shaking with rage. Even if this is true, you expect us to simply abandon everything? To give up our strength? We expect you to evolve beyond the need for strength through oppression, Director Chen replied. True strength comes from the ability to defend others, not the power to destroy them. Your Imperial Majesty, Intelligence Director Nixtal interrupted urgently, I'm receiving reports from across the Empire. Our fleets they're being systematically disassembled. Just like the Third Fleet. But, the crews are being extracted safely and placed in what appear to be comfortable detention facilities. The Empress closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 4 centuries of rule pressing down on her. Everything she had built, everything her ancestors had conquered, was being undone by a species she had never even heard of until 3 days ago. How long do we have to decide? She asked. You have already decided, Your Imperial Majesty, came the gentle reply. The process of dismantling your military capacity began the moment Admiral Thexvar fired on our moon. We simply wanted to give you the courtesy of understanding why. On the tactical displays around the chamber, red indicators representing Draconian military assets were winking out one by one. Not destroyed, transformed. Weapons became tools. Warships became transports. Military bases became research stations. The crews? Fleet Admiral Korthvan asked numbly. Are being retrained according to their individual aptitudes and desires. Your soldiers are becoming engineers, farmers, teachers, artists. Many have expressed relief at no longer being required to participate in conquest. The implications were staggering. Not only was humanity dismantling their empire, but they were actively converting their personnel to civilian occupations. The Draconian military machine was being transformed into something else entirely. What happens to us? The Empress asked. To the leadership? You will have choices to make, Director Chen replied. You can choose to help your people adapt to this transition, using your leadership experience to guide them through this transformation. Or you can choose to resist, in which case you will be placed in comfortable retirement while others lead. And our territories? The worlds we rule? Will be given the choice of independence or voluntary association with a new interstellar community we are establishing. Many species under Draconian rule have already expressed interest in joining a galactic federation based on cooperation rather than conquest. Empress Vexthera opened her eyes and looked around the chamber at her advisors. Some appeared terrified, others resigned, a few seemed almost relieved. The weight of maintaining an empire through force had been enormous, requiring constant vigilance and perpetual warfare. Perhaps there was something to be said for a different path. How do we know you won't simply eliminate us once our military is gone? She asked. Because we have nothing to gain from your elimination, came the reply. Draconian culture, art, philosophy, and technology all have value. Your species has much to contribute to galactic civilization once you are no longer focused on conquering it. The Empress made her decision. I accept your terms. What do you need from us? Simply your cooperation in the transition. Your people will need leaders they trust to help them understand that this is not the end of Draconian civilization, but the beginning of its next evolution. And our prisoners? Our people you have captured? Are already adapting remarkably well. Admiral Thexvar has requested permission to tour human agricultural installations. He seems fascinated by our farming techniques. Despite everything, the Empress found herself almost smiling at that image. There is one more thing, Director Chen added. We would like to extend an invitation for you to visit Earth. To see what a post-imperial civilization can become. The transport vessel that came for Empress Vexthera bore no resemblance to any ship in the Draconian databases. It appeared to be constructed from a material that shifted between liquid and solid states, flowing like water when moving through space but hardening into geometric patterns when at rest. The hull itself seemed to be alive, responding to external conditions with organic adaptability. Standing in the docking bay of what had once been the Imperial Throne World's primary spaceport, the Empress watched as the strange craft settled onto the landing pad without any visible propulsion system. It simply arrived, as if space itself had delivered it to its destination. Your Imperial Majesty, Intelligence Director Nixtal said softly, her cybernetic implants still struggling to analyze the approaching vessel. Are you certain about this? We know nothing about human intentions beyond their stated goals. Vexthera studied her oldest advisor, noting the genuine concern in the elderly Draconian's expression. Over the past week, the transformation of their empire had proceeded with terrifying efficiency. Military installations across hundreds of worlds had been converted to civilian infrastructure. Weapon production facilities were now manufacturing agricultural equipment. Training academies for soldiers had become universities for engineers and scientists. What choice do we have? The Empress replied. Our military no longer exists. Our weapons are gone. Our fleets have been converted to peaceful purposes. If the humans intended US harm, they could have achieved it without this elaborate transformation. The transport's hull rippled, and an opening appeared that hadn't been there moments before. Director Saracen emerged, looking exactly as the Empress had imagined based on their communications, a middle-aged human female with graying hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to significant responsibility. What the Empress hadn't expected was the small entourage that followed Chen from the ship. 3 humans of varying ages, wearing simple clothing that somehow conveyed more authority than any military uniform. Behind them came a figure that made Vexthera's heart skip a beat, Admiral Thexvar, alive and apparently unharmed. Admiral, she called out as the group approached. Thexvar stepped forward and offered the traditional salute, though something in his bearing had changed. The rigid military posture was still there, but there was a calmness to his expression that the Empress had never seen before. Your Imperial Majesty, he said formally, then added more quietly, you look well. As do you. I was told you were captured along with your fleet. Captured is not the word I would use, Thexvar replied carefully. Invited might be more accurate. Your Majesty, there are things you need to see. Director Chen approached with the easy confidence of someone completely unafraid of the massive Draconian ruler towering over her. Empress Vexthera, thank you for accepting our invitation. I'm Sarah Chen, and these are my colleagues, Dr. Michael Reeves, our Xenosociology specialist, Professor Lin Zhou, our transition coordinator, and Commander James Harrison, formerly of our Deep Space Reconnaissance Division. The Empress noted the word formerly with interest. Commander Harrison is no longer active military? Harrison, a lean man with prematurely gray hair and the watchful eyes of a veteran, smiled slightly. There's not much need for military reconnaissance when you're focused on peaceful contact and development assistance, Your Imperial Majesty. I've transitioned to civilian life, though I occasionally consult on first contact protocols. As they boarded the strange vessel, Vexthera was struck by the interior design. The walls seemed to glow with soft, natural light that adjusted automatically to optimal levels for both human and Draconian vision. The passages were wide enough to accommodate her large frame comfortably, suggesting the ship had somehow reconfigured itself for her visit. The vessel is alive, she asked as they moved through corridors that seemed to shift and adapt around them. In a sense, Dr. Reeves replied. Human technology evolved beyond mechanical systems several centuries ago. Our ships are grown rather than built, incorporating both biological and quantum principles. This particular vessel is one of our diplomatic transports, designed the following morning. Empress Vexthera stood on the observation deck of the human diplomatic complex, watching the sunrise over what Director Chen had called the Pacific Restoration Zone. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, but it wasn't the water that captured her attention, it was the life within it. Massive creatures moved beneath the surface, their bioluminescent patterns visible even from this height. These weren't native Earth species, she realized, but transplants from dozens of worlds, living in carefully maintained ecosystems that had been created to preserve biodiversity from across the galaxy. Impressive, isn't it? Admiral Thexmar said as he joined her at the railing. He had spent the night in guest quarters nearby, and she noted that he looked more rested than she had seen him in years. How did they manage it, she asked. Creating an environment where species from different worlds can coexist? The same way they managed to transform their entire civilization, came a new voice. They turned to see a human approaching, elderly, with the bearing of someone who had seen much of the galaxy. Through patience, understanding, and the acceptance that true harmony requires sacrifice from all participants. Admiral Thexvar straightened slightly. Your Imperial Majesty, this is Dr. Elena Vasquez, the former Admiral of Earth's Deep Space Fleet. Former Admiral, the Empress inquired. Dr. Vasquez smiled. I commanded humanity's last military fleet during our transition period. When we made the decision to abandon conquest-based expansion, I was given the choice to adapt to our new paradigm or retire. I chose adaptation. What do you do now? I help other species navigate similar transitions, Vasquez replied. Over the past 3 centuries, 17 different civilizations have approached us for assistance in evolving beyond their conquest phases. Some transitions were voluntary, others required more persuasion. The implications of that statement hung in the morning air. The Draconian Empire wasn't the first to face this choice, and likely wouldn't be the last. Director Chen emerged from the complex behind them, carrying what appeared to be a living tablet that displayed information in response to her touch. Good morning, Your Imperial Majesty. I hope you found your accommodations comfortable. More than comfortable, Vexthera replied honestly. The guest suite had been extraordinary, walls that could become transparent to show any view in the galaxy, furniture that adapted to her physiology, and an environmental system that somehow made her feel more energetic than she had in decades. Excellent. Today, I'd like to show you the practical aspects of our civilization. But, first, there's someone who has been eager to meet you. Chen activated her tablet, and a holographic projection appeared showing a Draconian female in what appeared to be a laboratory setting. But, this wasn't any Draconian the Empress recognized from Imperial records. Your Imperial Majesty, the figure said, offering a respectful bow. I am Dr. Hyxandra, formerly of the Imperial Science Division. Formerly? Vexthera echoed. I was captured along with the research vessel Voidseeker approximately 15 years ago, Dr. Hyxandra explained. Since then, I've been working with human scientists on various projects. Captured? But, our records show the Voidseeker was destroyed in a spatial anomaly. That was the story we allowed your empire to believe, Director Chen admitted. Dr. Hyxandra and her team were conducting weapons research that would have destabilized several star systems. We intervened to prevent a catastrophe. And, now? Admiral Thexvar asked.
Now I'm researching stellar engineering for peacetime applications, Dr. QAXandra said with obvious enthusiasm. Did you know it's possible to extend a star's lifespan by carefully adjusting its fusion processes?
We're working on projects that could preserve stellar systems for millions of additional years.
The hologram shifted to show the laboratory around her.
The Empress could see other Draconians working alongside humans and what appeared to be representatives of several other species she didn't recognize. How many of our people have you recruited over the years? She asked.
Currently, about 40,000 Draconians are living and working in human space, Dr. Vasquez replied.
All voluntarily, once they understood the alternatives available to them.
Including military personnel? Especially military personnel, Director Chen confirmed.
Warriors often make the best protectors once they understand what they're truly protecting. They moved inside the complex, where Chen led them through a series of chambers that demonstrated the scope of human achievement. One room contained representatives from dozens of species, all working together on what appeared to be a massive computational project.
The Galactic Heritage Archive, Professor Joe explained as he joined their group.
We're creating a comprehensive record of every civilization in the galaxy, their history, culture, technology, art, everything that makes them unique.
Including civilizations that have been conquered or destroyed, the Empress asked. Especially those, Dr. Vasquez said quietly. Many species have been lost to various empire-building phases throughout galactic history. We preserve their memory and, when possible, help rebuild their societies.
The next chamber contained something that made the Empress's heart skip. The room was filled with artifacts from civilizations she recognized as former Draconian conquests, art, literature, religious objects, scientific instruments. But these weren't trophies of victory. They were preserved with reverence, carefully maintained and studied. The Zalorian Symphony crystals, Admiral Thexvar whispered, approaching a display containing what appeared to be living mineral formations that hummed with harmonic frequencies. Thought to be lost when their homeworld was annexed, Dr. Reeves said carefully. We managed to recover them before the Imperial Cultural Suppression Protocols could be fully implemented. We preserved their music, the Admiral asked, his voice filled with something approaching wonder.
We preserved everything we could, Chen replied.
Language, customs, religious practices, artistic traditions. The Zalorians now have a thriving colony in the Andromeda Arm, and they've been able to rebuild their civilization using these preserved elements.
You rebuilt civilizations we destroyed?
We restore what can be restored and help species adapt to new circumstances when restoration isn't possible, Professor Joe confirmed. It's one of our primary functions as a post-imperial society. They continued through the complex, each chamber revealing more evidence of humanity's vast project of galactic restoration and preservation. The Empress began to understand that what she was seeing wasn't just advanced technology or sophisticated administration, it was an entire civilization dedicated to undoing the damage caused by conquest-based expansion.
The scale of this, she said finally. How do you coordinate efforts across such distances? How do you maintain unity of purpose across thousands of worlds?
We don't maintain unity through control, Director Chen explained. We maintain it through shared values and common purpose. Every human world and colony operates independently, but we're all working toward the same goals.
Which are the preservation and nurturing of life in all its forms,
the protection of civilizations from forces that would destroy them, the gradual transformation of the galaxy from a battlefield into a garden.
They entered a final chamber that took the Empress's breath away.
The entire room was transparent, providing a view that seemed to encompass the entire galaxy. But this wasn't a simple holographic display, it was a real-time representation of galactic civilization, showing the movement of ships, the pulse of communications, the flow of resources and information between thousands of worlds.
This is the coordination network, Commander Harrison explained. Every human facility in the galaxy is connected through quantum entanglement.
We can respond to crises, coordinate assistance, and share information instantaneously across any distance.
And you use this for what? Conquest? Control? Assistance, Dr. Vasquez replied.
When the Korthak plague threatened to wipe out 3 species in the Rigel sector, this network coordinated medical response from across the galaxy. When the stellar collapse in the Perseus Arm left 7 civilizations without habitable worlds, we coordinated the largest refugee resettlement in galactic history. You rescue the people we would have conquered, Admiral Thexvar observed.
We rescue anyone who needs rescuing, Chen confirmed.
including, when necessary, the conquerors themselves. The Empress stared at the galactic display, trying to comprehend the implications of what she was seeing. The Draconian Empire, for all its might, controlled perhaps 5% of the galaxy's civilized worlds. But humanity's influence seemed to touch every system, every species, every corner of galactic civilization. "How long?" she asked quietly. "How long what?" Director Chen inquired. "How long have you been orchestrating galactic events? How long have you been managing the development of other species?" The silence that followed was lengthy and uncomfortable. "Since our transformation began," Dr. Vasquez finally admitted. "About 4 centuries. We realized early that we couldn't simply withdraw from galactic affairs. Too many species had been damaged by imperial expansions, including our own. Someone had to take responsibility for repair and protection. So you appointed yourselves the galaxy's guardians?" "We accepted the responsibility that came with our power," Chen replied. "The same responsibility you now have the opportunity to accept." The Empress turned to face the assembled humans. "You're offering us partnership in this project?" "We're offering you the chance to become what every species can become given the opportunity," Professor Zhou said. "Builders instead of destroyers. Protectors instead of conquerors. Gardeners of civilization instead of harvesters of worlds." "And if we refuse?" The galactic display shifted, highlighting Draconian space. The Empress could see her territories, her conquered worlds, her subjugated species. But now she could also see the quantum field networks surrounding every installation, the human observers stationed throughout her empire, the gentle but inexorable process of transformation already underway. "Your people are already making the choice individually," Commander Harrison pointed out. "Our reports indicate that voluntary resignation from Imperial military service has increased by 3,000% over the past month. Your colonists are establishing independent governments. Your subjugated species are declaring independence. The Empire is dissolving," Admiral Thexvar said quietly. "With or without our cooperation." "But, with your cooperation," Director Chen added, "the transition can be guided, managed, made as painless as possible for everyone involved. Your people can become part of something greater instead of simply being absorbed by it." The Empress looked around the chamber one final time, studying the faces of the humans who had just offered her species a future beyond everything they had ever known. It wasn't really a choice, she realized. It was an opportunity to shape inevitable change rather than be shaped by it. "What would you need from us?" she asked. "Leadership during the transition," Chen replied immediately. "Your people trust you. They need someone they respect to help them understand that this isn't the end of Draconian civilization, it's the beginning of its greatest era." "And, after the transition?" "After the transition, you help us extend the same opportunity to other species that haven't yet learned to evolve beyond conquest. You become the gardeners your people were always capable of being." As the Empress considered this, a new voice emerged from the communication system, younger, but with the unmistakable accent of Imperial Draconian nobility. "Mother?" The Empress whirled toward the display, her heart's racing. "ZYX era?" A holographic projection appeared showing a young Draconian female in surroundings the Empress didn't recognize. Her daughter looked healthy, vibrant, and, remarkably at peace. "Hello, Mother," Princess ZYX era said, offering a formal bow. "I heard you were visiting the humans. Where are you? How are you here?" "I'm on a research station in the Vega system," ZYX era replied. "I've been working with the Ecological Restoration Project for the past 2 years." The Empress staggered slightly. Her daughter had been reported missing during a diplomatic mission to the Outer Territories. The investigation had concluded she was likely killed by rebels. 2 years, she whispered. "We rescued her transport when it was attacked by Karathi raiders," Dr. Vasquez explained quietly. "She was badly injured, and, by the time she recovered, she had decided she wanted to remain with us." "To do what?" "To help repair the damage our empire has caused," Princess ZYX era said simply. "Mother, I've seen what we've done to other species. I've helped rebuild civilizations we destroyed. I can't go back to being part of a system that causes such suffering." The Empress felt something break inside her chest. Her daughter, her heir, the future of their dynasty, had already made the choice being offered to her. "Are you happy?" she asked finally. Princess ZYX Sarah's expression softened.
happier than I ever was in the Imperial Court, Mother. I'm doing work that matters. I'm helping create rather than destroy. I'm part of something that makes the galaxy better instead of something that makes it worse." The Empress closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 4 centuries of tradition and conquest pressing against this moment of decision. When she opened them again, she was looking at Director Chen. "When do we begin?" 5 years had passed since the dissolution of the Draconian Empire, and former Empress Vexthera stood in the observation chamber of the New Harmony, humanity's newest diplomatic vessel, watching the approach to the Karathi homeworld. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was now part of a first contact team approaching the very species that had once been among her empire's most stubborn enemies. "Nervous?" asked Dr. Sarah Chen, who now served as Director of Interspecies Relations for the Galactic Cooperation Council. "Cautious," Vexthera replied, studying the tactical display that showed the Karathi defensive grid surrounding their system. "The Karathi were formidable opponents during our expansion. They destroyed more Draconian ships than any other species except the humans. Which makes them excellent candidates for partnership," observed Commander James Harrison, now serving as the mission's security coordinator. "Species that successfully resist conquest often have the strength of character needed for galactic cooperation." The communication system activated, and a familiar voice filled the chamber. "New Harmony, this is Admiral Thexvar aboard the construction vessel Second Chance. We've completed the preliminary orbital installations around Karathi 7. The population is ready for relocation." Vexthera smiled at hearing her former fleet commander's voice. Thexvar had adapted to his new role with remarkable enthusiasm, leading humanitarian engineering projects across the former Imperial territories. His expertise in logistics and large-scale operations had proven invaluable in restoring damaged civilizations. "Excellent work, Admiral," Director Chen replied. "How are the Karathi responding to the evacuation assistance?" "Better than expected," came Thexvar's response. "Once they understood we were helping them escape their dying star rather than attempting conquest, cooperation improved dramatically. Princess Zyx Sarah's diplomatic team has established excellent relations with their leadership." Through the viewport, Vexthera could see the massive construction projects that had been underway for the past 6 months. The Karathi homeworld star was entering an unstable phase that would render their system uninhabitable within a decade. Rather than allowing an entire civilization to perish, the Galactic Cooperation Council had mobilized one of the largest rescue operations in galactic history. "Incoming transmission from the Karathi High Command," announced the communications officer. The main display activated to show a Karathi military leader whose scarred exoskeleton marked him as a veteran of many conflicts. War Marshal Kordak had been one of the Draconian Empire's most implacable foes, a strategic genius who had cost them dozens of star systems during their expansion attempts. "Humans of the vessel New Harmony," the War Marshal began in heavily accented galactic standard, "I have been informed that the former Draconian Empress accompanies your mission." "That's correct, War Marshal," Director Chen replied diplomatically. Vexthera now serves as a senior coordinator for the Galactic Cooperation Council. The Karathi leader's compound eyes fixed on Vexthera with an intensity that made her scales ripple with defensive coloration. "You are the one who ordered the bombardment of our 7th colony." The chamber fell silent. The incident War Marshal Kordak referenced had occurred over 2 decades ago during the height of Imperial expansion. Vexthera had authorized the destruction of a Karathi settlement that had refused to surrender, killing over 2 million civilians. "I am," she replied simply. "And now you come offering salvation from our dying star?" "I come offering the opportunity to help repair damage I helped cause," Vexthera said, meeting the War Marshal's gaze steadily. "I cannot undo the deaths I ordered. But I can work to ensure no other species suffers similar losses." The Karathi leader was silent for long moments. Finally, he spoke again. "My daughter was among those who died in your bombardment." The words hit Vexthera like a physical blow. She had known, intellectually, that her orders had caused deaths. But, hearing the personal cost from one of her former enemies made the reality inescapable. "I am sorry," she said, the words feeling inadequate. "I know that changes nothing, but I am truly sorry for your loss." "Sorry," the War Marshal repeated, his mandibles clicking in what she recognized as either anger or contemplation. "The mighty Draconian Empire apologizes." "The former Empress apologizes," Dr. Chen corrected gently. "Vexthera speaks for herself, not for any empire." War Marshal Kordak studied them through the transmission for nearly a minute before responding. You humans have strange methods. You defeat our greatest enemy without firing a shot, then convince them to help save those they once tried to destroy. Redemption is possible for everyone, Commander Harrison observed. Even former emperors. And you believe this redemption is genuine?
We believe the choice to seek redemption is genuine, Director Chen replied.
The genuineness of the redemption itself must be proven through action over time.
The War Marshal's image flickered as he consulted with others off-screen. When he returned his attention to the transmission, his tone had shifted slightly.
Very well. The Karathi High Command will receive your delegation.
But I will speak privately with the former Empress.
There are things that must be said.
An hour later, Vexthera found herself in a private communication chamber aboard the New Harmony, facing War Marshal Kordak across a secure quantum link. The Karathi leader had removed his ceremonial armor, revealing battle scars that covered most of his carapace.
You were not what I expected, he said without preamble. What did you expect? Defiance. Arrogance.
The inability to admit error that characterized every Draconian leader I encountered during our conflicts. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully.
Instead, you openly acknowledge your crimes.
Because they were crimes, Vexthera replied. I spent centuries telling myself we were bringing order to the galaxy, but we were simply imposing our will through violence.
The humans helped me understand the difference. Through their own conquest?
Through their own example. They showed me what a species looks like after it evolves beyond the need for domination. War Marshal Kordak was quiet for several minutes. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight of old pain.
My daughter's name was Plexandra. She was a xenobiologist studying the native life forms on the 7th colony.
When your ships arrived, she was documenting a species of bioluminescent plants that only existed in that ecosystem.
Vexthera felt her heart constrict.
She was a scientist. She could have evacuated when your ultimatum was broadcast. But she refused to leave her research. She believed the plant species represented a potential medical breakthrough that could help many worlds. And she died for that dedication. She died because you decided her life, and the lives of 2 million others, were worth less than making an example of Karathi resistance. The brutal honesty of the statement left Vexthera struggling for words.
Finally, she managed to speak. You are right.
And I have spent every day since beginning to understand the scope of that decision trying to find a way to balance the scales.
Can they be balanced?
No, she admitted. But the attempt must be made.
War Marshal Kordak studied her through the transmission link.
The humans tell us you have spent 5 years working to restore civilizations damaged by your empire.
Among other tasks, yes.
And that you have volunteered for the most dangerous missions, including first contact with potentially hostile species.
The risk is appropriate given my history.
They also tell us you have refused any form of personal benefit from this work. No payment, no recognition, no special privileges. I don't deserve benefits for trying to repair damage I helped cause. The War Marshal leaned back in his chair.
You understand that nothing you do will bring back my daughter?
Yes. Or the 2 million others who died that day?
Yes. And yet you continue the work anyway.
Because it's the only meaningful thing I can do with the remainder of my life.
Another long silence.
Then, unexpectedly, the War Marshal's mandibles shifted into what passed for a smile among his species.
Plexandra would have found you fascinating, he said.
She always believed that true understanding required the ability to acknowledge one's mistakes and learn from them. She sounds like she was remarkable.
She was.
He paused. The plant species she died trying to preserve, we managed to save samples.
Human biotechnology has allowed us to propagate them in artificial environments.
They have indeed proven to have significant medical applications.
I'm glad her sacrifice wasn't meaningless.
It was meaningless at the time, the War Marshal corrected. But perhaps meaning can be found in what grows from it.
The transmission link flickered as another voice joined the conversation, Princess Zyxera, calling from the Karathi homeworld surface.
Mother, War Marshal Kordak, I hope I'm not interrupting.
Not at all, Princess, the War Marshal replied. How progresses the cultural preservation project? Remarkably well, Zyxera reported.
The Karathi archives contain over 3,000 years of artistic and scientific achievement.
We should be able to preserve everything before the final evacuation. And the biological specimens? Dr. Reeves' team has catalogued over 4 million species unique to this system. Habitat preservation ships are standing by to transport breeding populations to suitable worlds throughout the galaxy. Vexthera felt a surge of pride watching her daughter coordinate the massive rescue operation. ZYXera had grown into exactly the kind of leader their people needed, someone who understood that true strength came from building rather than destroying. Mother, ZYXera continued, the Karathi Council has asked if you would be willing to participate in a ceremony they're planning. What kind of ceremony? A remembrance ritual for those lost during the Imperial period, War Marshal Kordak explained. Not just Karathi losses, but casualties from all species affected by Draconian expansion. They want representatives from every civilization involved. Including former Imperial leadership? Especially former Imperial leadership, the War Marshal confirmed. The Council believes that true healing requires acknowledgement from all parties. Vexthera considered this carefully. Such a ceremony would be emotionally devastating, confronting the full scope of damage caused by decisions she had made or authorized. But it might also serve a purpose beyond her personal comfort. Will other species be willing to participate if I'm involved? Most have agreed already, ZYXera replied. The Zolorians, the Antari, the Vegan Collective, even the Centauri Commune. The consensus is that your participation would make the ceremony more meaningful, not less. Because I represent genuine change rather than mere political necessity, Vexthera realized. Because you represent the possibility that even those who cause great harm can choose to become instruments of healing, War Marshal Kordak said. The communications link expanded to include Director Chen and the rest of the diplomatic team. Vexthera, Chen said, this ceremony could become a significant step forward in galactic reconciliation. But the choice has to be yours. Through the viewport of the new harmony, Vexthera could see the Karathi homeworld, a beautiful blue-green sphere orbiting a star that would soon expand and consume everything in its system. Despite their impending stellar catastrophe, the Karathi were thinking about healing rather than survival. It was a profound lesson in priorities. I will participate, she decided. If my presence can help bring closure to those we harmed, then it's the least I can do. Excellent, War Marshal Kordak said, and this time his mandibles definitely displayed approval. The ceremony will take place on the last day before final evacuation. It seems appropriate. 3 days later, Vexthera stood on a platform constructed specifically for the remembrance ceremony, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species that had suffered under Draconian conquest. The location was symbolic, a memorial garden that the Karathi had built to honor their own war dead, now expanded to include memorial stones for every species affected by Imperial expansion. As the ceremony began, each species representative spoke about their losses. The numbers were staggering, entire civilizations reduced to scattered refugees, billions of lives lost to Imperial conquest, countless cultural treasures destroyed in the name of bringing order to the galaxy. When her turn came, Vexthera approached the central memorial stone and placed her clawed hands upon its surface. I stand before you not as a former empress, but as someone who learned too late the true cost of power, she began, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd through translation systems. I cannot undo the choices I made. I cannot restore the lives lost to Imperial expansion. I cannot recover the civilizations destroyed in the name of conquest. But I can pledge that the remainder of my existence will be devoted to ensuring such losses never occur again. She paused, looking out at the faces of beings whose people she had once ordered subjugated or destroyed. To those who have lost family, friends, homeworlds, and heritage to Imperial conquest, I offer not excuses, but acknowledgement. Your losses were real. Your pain was real. The injustices committed in the name of order were genuine injustices. And, to those who might be tempted to follow similar paths of conquest, I offer this warning: the power to destroy is not strength. True strength comes from the power to create, to protect, to nurture life in all its forms. As she stepped back from the memorial, something unexpected happened. War Marshal Kordak approached and, in a gesture that shocked the assembled crowd, offered her the traditional Karathi greeting of respect between equals. You have traveled a long path from empire to understanding, he said publicly. Perhaps there is hope for all of us. One by one, other representatives approached to offer similar gestures of acknowledgement. Not forgiveness, that would take much longer, if it ever came at all.
but recognition that growth and change were possible, even for those who had caused great harm. As the ceremony concluded and the final evacuation of the Karathi system began, Vexthara found herself standing with Director Chen and her daughter, watching the last transport vessels depart the doomed homeworld.
Regrets? Chen asked. Vexthara considered the question carefully. About the Empire? Many. About the path that led us here? None at all. Above them, the Karathi star pulsed with the instability that would soon make this system uninhabitable.
But the evacuation ships carried not just refugees, they carried a civilization's entire heritage, preserved and protected by the same galactic community that had once been threatened by Draconian conquest.
What's next? Zyxera asked.
The Rigelian situation requires attention, Chen replied. Their expansion has become increasingly aggressive, and several smaller species have requested intervention.
Another imperial dissolution? Vexthara inquired. If necessary.
Though we always hope for voluntary transition.
And, if they refuse? Director Chen's expression became slightly sad. Then, we do what we did with the Draconian Empire. We offer them the choice between evolution and management.
As the new Harmony prepared to depart the Karathi system, Vexthara took one last look at the dying star that had necessitated this massive rescue operation. The universe was vast and, often dangerous, filled with challenges that could destroy entire civilizations. But it was also filled with beings capable of remarkable compassion, cooperation, and growth. The age of galactic empires was ending, replaced by something far more complex but infinitely more hopeful, a community of civilizations learning to work together despite their differences, protecting the weak, preserving the unique, and ensuring that the galaxy's greatest treasures were its living, growing, evolving peoples.
Destination, Admiral, asked the navigation officer.
The Rigel system, Vexthara replied, settling into her seat as the ship's senior diplomatic coordinator. Let's go see if we can help another species learn to evolve. As the new Harmony engaged its quantum folding drive and departed for their next mission, the former Draconian Empress reflected on the strange turns her life had taken. From conqueror to protector, from destroyer to builder, from empress to servant of galactic peace. It wasn't the legacy she had planned to leave behind. But, perhaps, she thought as the stars shifted around them, it was the legacy the galaxy needed.